It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
Dancing in the streets of Pyongyang this evening was brought to an abrupt end after Keir Starmer unfortunately mistook North Korea for South Korea when he was announcing a new trade deal at Prime Minister's questions. He also told the House that he had absolutely not lifted the sanctions on Russian oil when his own documents told a very different story. And the 4th District of the congressional area of Kentucky was not bought by the Israel lobby, it was stolen, rigged. He was 2020, was Thomas Massey, and the world diplomatic circles are stunned at the success of the summit between China and the Russian Federation. It's all coming up here on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Stay tuned. Well, it was a particularly unfortunate Prime Minister's questions today in London, where Keir Starmer, the beleaguered, for now, British Prime Minister, made not one but two gargantuan errors. Well, one of them was an error. He began by announcing a new trade deal that Britain had reached with North Korea, which came as a surprise to everybody, even me, as the one who brokered the opening of diplomatic relations between Britain and North Korea in the first place some decades ago. But by the end of Prime Minister's questions, in that familiar nasal drawl, he was forced to admit that he had confused North Korea with South Korea. It's easily done, you know. But much more significantly, he was caught out lying. He declared at Prime Minister's questions that Britain was absolutely not, his words, lifting the sanctions on Russian oil, only for his own government documents to reveal that he had lifted indefinitely the ban on the purchase of Russian oil refined in third countries. So we are now officially buying Russian oil in Britain, but only if it's triple the price that it would have been if we had bought it directly from Russia. Because, of course, Britain is dripping in money. We're rolling in it. We're living such lives that such things matter not. We are buying Russian oil from countries like India at 3 times the price that India paid for them. Good for India, good for Russia, not so good for the British consumer. It is a part of the collapse of the so-called isolation of Russia, which is visibly coming apart at the seams. The Muay Thai, which my sons all practice, Association International, lifted the ban on Russian Muay Thai athletes and now will permit them to perform, to compete in the games next month with the Russian flag and with that unforgettable Russian anthem. It is a crack, but it's not the first one. The World Gymnastics Federation earlier in the week lifted the ban on Russian gymnasts from participating in international affairs. And like the Muay Thai, the anthem and the flag will be fully and visibly on view. The European governments, which are sunk in a slough of despond and economic destruction, and not to mention the collapse in authority of those governments and the approval ratings of all of them put together, doesn't even reach 50%. They are in deep, deep trouble. They've thrown so many boomerangs at Russia and have sustained the obvious damage as the boomerang came back to hit them that the status quo is no longer an option. Mind you, the European Union, like those Japanese soldiers still holding out in the Philippines 30 years after the Second World War ended, refusing to surrender, still kowtowing to their emperor, and still vowing that they were ready to fight on, the European Union leaders will simply not adjust their rhetoric. The joke foreign minister of the European Union, Maria Callas, announced just yesterday that China was a cancer that could either be treated by more morphine or by chemotherapy. China, to which every leader in the world is currently beating a path. The president of Serbia, Vučić, will be there at the end of the week. The Russian president, about whom more later, has just left Beijing. The French have been, Starmer has been, Merz has been. They're all trooping to the great hall of the people in Beijing, though some of them only get to look round it rather than to hold a meeting in it, while their foreign minister describes China as a cancer. If the European Union does not sack her for that, she's plainly as unsackable as the Donald Trump who negotiated with himself the master deal of the century, though whether it will hold up in court must be a matter of conjecture. I refer, of course, to the $1,740,000,000 deal for a slush fund controlled by Donald Trump, which the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS in the United States, has handed Donald Trump so that he may compensate those who were wronged in the aftermath of the January 6th incidents. It is completely unprecedented when you think what Richard Nixon had to declare he was not a crook for. Possession of a dog that had been given to him, that hadn't been declared. It is truly astounding. Donald Trump has now got $1.7 billion of US taxpayer money under his own control to dole out to his own supporters to compensate them for the oppression they suffered under the Joe Biden administration in the wake of the January 6th incidents. But that wasn't the best deal that Donald Trump got from the IRS yesterday. The personal attorney of Donald Trump, who's now, of course, the attorney of the entire United States, that's the way these things work, struck a deal with the IRS that Trump and his sons will never again be audited by the IRS for past, present, or future tax returns. Just think about that for a minute. It means they can declare zero on their tax returns here on in. Zero. We earned nothing, Gov, and not be audited forever, in perpetuity, including upon the end of his presidency, the end of his life. His sons are now immune forever from any auditing of their tax affairs. Now, the fact that Trump's personal attorney did that deal with Trump's personal appointee as the head of the IRS on behalf of Trump, who's the president, must be of dubious legality. Well, not quite as much, perhaps, as the theft of District 4 in Kentucky in yesterday's congressional primary. Thomas Massey, who earned the undying fury and enmity of Donald Trump by forcing the state to reveal hitherto redacted testimony and documents on the Epstein affair, was defeated by 10,000 votes. All of them were mail-in ballots. What? Mail-in ballots? Them? Again? Although the whole thing was counted on those counting machines. You remember those, Donald? Those counting machines? I better not say more. The Fox News had to pay billions for questioning the veracity of those voting machines. It is the case that Thomas Massey won the voters by almost 2-1. But that familiar midnight dump of mail-in ballots, all of which were for Massey's rival, a man that nobody had ever heard of before he entered this race, a man who refused any and all debates in the course of the campaign, a man whose victory party was attended by only 20 people, a man who received only 47 donations from people in Kentucky, although he received plenty from Israel and its lobby across the United States. And AIPAC is tonight boasting that they have eliminated an outspoken critic of Israel and replaced him with an outspoken supporter. Well, that's an understatement if ever I saw one. Ed Gallerin, for it is he, is a fanatic supporter of Israel who have just snatched the 4th congressional district of the great state of Kentucky, although nobody in Kentucky has the slightest interest in what happens on the Mediterranean thousands of miles away. But the big donors that Trump persuaded to flood the television screens of the 4th district with AI smears of Massey in a throuple with 2 Democratic women, AI printed infinitesimally small, and it looked for all the world like real footage, smearing him, slandering him, all on behalf of the state of Israel. So I would have been talking about how Israel bought the election in Kentucky, but I'm now talking about how they stole it. These mail-in ballots are entirely fraudulent and are entirely responsible for the reversal of the voting in person numbers, which led to Trump, before the vote was counted, when only 3% of the votes had been counted, publishing on Truth Social a declaration that Massey had been defeated. If Massey, like Bernie Sanders before him, when he was cheated by the Democratic Party panjandrums, accepts this result, he's less of a man than I thought he was. There's a sore loser law in Kentucky which forbids anyone who loses a primary from then running as an independent in the subsequent election is one thing. But it seems to me obvious that a write-in candidate, perhaps Massey's wife or someone else, must take the floor. Maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't know. Somebody must not allow this theft of a congressional district in Kentucky to be upheld. It's also possible that Massey will now turn his mind to national office rather than merely statewide or congressional-wide. As well he might. A thoroughly impressive fellow who paid the maximum price at the ballot box for revealing to the world the kind of crimes that we now know Donald Trump is all over. It's astounding that no one is reporting on the, except Blue Whales that I follow on Twitter, Blue Whales, WH, Whales, which reveals that every 11 minutes Donald Trump is making a stock market trade and is then boosting the companies that he just bought stock moments before on national television from the pulpit of the presidency. It's astounding that not one single mainstream media outlet has reported on the Blue Whales revelation today. 11 minutes. I mean, he's giving interviews most of the day, and when he's not giving interviews, he's ordering new stocks and shares. And his sons are coining it. Not just their gold-plated, non-existent mobile phone, but far bigger fish they're frying than that. This is the most corrupt, openly, rampantly corrupt administration the United States has ever had. Al Capone would blush at the level of corruption emanating from the White House, from the Oval Office, from the Lincoln bedroom, or wherever it is Donald Trump sleeps with his various partners. The truth is, this presidency is rapidly hurtling to an end as lie after lie after lie is revealed. Just this week, Trump said he was calling off an attack on Iran that he was about to mount in an hour. He was about, in an hour's time, to launch what he hoped would be decisive and devastating bombardment of civilians in targets all over Iran because he'd been asked to do so by the governments of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates and the rest. The problem is, those governments immediately said they had no idea that he was even going to launch such an attack on Iran. Far less were they responsible for asking him to call it off. Is it taco? Is it Trump always chickening out? He's kicked the can into next week, and now he's briefing that an agreement is imminent with the Islamic Republic of Iran. We'll ask Professor Marandi in a minute whether there's any truth in that or whether it is mere market manipulation of which Trump has made not just an every day but an every hour, every 10 minutes of every hour, his imprimatur, his leitmotif, or whether the war is about to begin again. And if it is, the Iranians have promised condign response. The Iranians have promised new forms and theaters of conflict that haven't even been touched yet. The existence of certain states in the Gulf is threatened, may very well disappear from the face of the earth. And the straits of the access to the Red Sea will undoubtedly be closed by the brave people of the Yemen, which will bring both the straits to a complete standstill and make the world economic crisis that we are currently in, though nobody in power wants to admit or talk about it, to a 1930s style economic collapse and depression. But I better move on to the events in Beijing. China waved a very sad farewell to their favorite visitor. 25 visits Vladimir Putin has made to China since becoming the president of the Russian Federation. But something was different about this particular visit. Not just the majesty, the pomp and the ceremony, which was of an order of magnitude greater than that which greeted, I suppose I should say, the recently departed American President Donald Trump. Putin was received, as indeed he is, as China's closest friend, China's closest strategic partner in the world. In fact, both men insist that there is no word that can describe the depth of their relationship. After decades of the United States trying to keep Russia and China as far apart from each other as they could, the current crop of US presidents have made them literally indissoluble. They are umbilically tied economically, politically, militarily, socially, culturally. Even Putin's granddaughter, previously unannounced, is fluent in Chinese. Maria Zakharova, the Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesperson, who speaks for the Russian government regularly in multiple languages, is absolutely fluent in China. China and Russia could not possibly be closer. And that's going to have enormous implications for the future of the world. They issued a declaration today, a declaration of international relations of a new type. It was a blueprint, I've read it, a blueprint for what the new world is going to look like. And they will brook no interference in its implementation, least of all from a dead, lame duck president, which November is sure to bring. It's coming up all in the next 1 hour and 40 minutes, because it's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned. There's a legend on the line in Oklahoma. It's May on Trump. Welcome back, May.
Trump is using a magic 8-ball to make his decisions. He apparently has completely lost whatever mind he had to begin with. This is just ridiculous. Does he really think anyone's going to believe that? I'm here to say, and I'm here to join you and everybody else, the emperor has no clothes on. He's as naked as they come. And unfortunately, I'm pretty sure he got naked with some young people. And that is why he so desperately is trying to kill this whole Epstein thing. And he's just making it worse.
I'm wondering when Donald Trump knew that he was implicated in these Epstein files and what it was that he knew. That's the big question, because he wouldn't have been banging the Epstein drum all this time and then suddenly to pull the rug. That tells me that it was a late decision, that someone came late to Trump to say, you know, you really don't want to be doing that.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
The poll is really funny. Is Volodymyr Zelensky corrupt? Is the Pope a Catholic? Do bears defecate in the woods? I know. But what's funny about it is 25,000 people have voted, by the way, 21,000 of those on YouTube, but only 279 people on Twitter have voted. And less than half of them think that Volodymyr Zelensky is corrupt. I'll tell you who's corrupt. Elon Musk and Twitter are an utterly corrupt organization. 279 people saw our poll when I have almost 1 million followers on your platform. You corrupt skunk, Elon Musk. You're a disgrace, a scandal, but you're also a joke. I hope you get heavily punished for that legal case you've just lost in California. Get my drift? I saw you just reeling, I think we can say, reeling after the result through a kind of aircraft hangar at the SpaceX headquarters. You didn't look in a good way to me, man. I'd get myself checked out if I was you. Anyway, is Volodymyr Zelensky corrupt? Yes or no? Well, 98% on Telegram think yes. 91% on the YouTube community poll think yes. 95% on the YouTube stream think yes. But only 48% of admittedly only 279 voters on X think that Volodymyr Zelensky is corrupt. It is a joke. Now, if you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada. +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland. 0808 196 5522. And the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Well, the man who's helped us understand the entirety of the crisis in the Persian Gulf from the very beginning is the now ubiquitous, though I lay claim to having discovered him before he became a worldwide superstar of international media. It's, of course, Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi, Professor of English Literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. May God bless you, Professor. It's always a delight to see your beautiful smile. Are you smiling in anticipation of an agreement, or because you've got a lot of cards up your sleeves if the agreement doesn't materialize and war begins again?
Well, thank you, George, for inviting me. I'm smiling because of your kind introduction, too kind. I think from what we are seeing so far, war is almost inevitable. And the United States will probably, and the Israeli regime will probably carry out an assault in the coming days. Nothing is for certain, but the Speaker of Parliament, who is also the chief negotiator, he has come out today and said that this is the first time that he said that he believes that an attack is imminent. So the Iranian armed forces are fully prepared. I think that Trump is either being misled, or he feels that he has no option but to attack Iran. Maybe right before I came on air, I heard you speaking, I think it was recording from before, that a lady was saying that she believes that Trump, his problems in the Epstein files must be very serious, and you acknowledge that. It's, for me, this seems to be the most plausible answer, because nothing that Trump does makes sense. From what we heard from people who used to be close to Trump, like Tucker Carlson, he says that when he went to see Trump, it was clear to him that Trump didn't want to have this war, and that he knew that it was not a good idea. That was my understanding from what Tucker Carlson said. So that means he was forced to go to war. And after 39 days of a genocidal assault, he failed. Then afterwards, during the ceasefire, he violated the ceasefire. He imposed a siege on Iran, a starvation siege, by the way, George. What he is attempting to do is to prevent Iranians from importing medicine and food. This is a starvation siege. This is not just a siege for like equipment or factories or anything like that. He wants to deny people the right to survive. And of course, this is what the Americans have been doing for decades through their maximum pressure sanctions. But you won't hear this in the Western media. But in any case, that is failing too, because he carried out an operation 3 weeks ago or so, which also failed. So the siege failed, the war failed, the operation failed. And now he is hoping to carry out another offensive, which I believe is inevitably going to fail.
We know from Shakespeare's time about the dilemma faced by such men in the middle of a river of blood, whether it's bloodier to go on or to return. It's an age-old question. I do think that there's reason to believe that Trump does not want to go to war. One is the testimony you've cited of people like Tucker Carlson who know him well and who've spoken to him intensively over this question over the last few months. Another is the opposition to it, which is clear enough, of the Vice President, J.D. Vance. Another is the fact that the Republicans are about to lose Texas, about to lose Florida. They are actually hemorrhaging support in the upcoming midterms in a way that poses an existential danger to Trump, because of course they can afford to lose control of one house, but if they lose control of both, then an actual impeachment followed by removal from office has all kinds of perils for Donald Trump. And all polls show that this Iran war is the most unpopular war there has ever been in the history of the United States. And there's the constant lying that he is on the verge of a deal. So I personally believe that Trump would like to get off the hook, which, as you say, makes the whole thing even darker, because it means that somebody else above the President of the United States is calling these shots. And that person's Netanyahu, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. I think there is no doubt about it that if the United States goes to war again, it will be Netanyahu, the Zionist lobby, and the Israeli regime that is the decider, as was once said by Bush. The bond market right now is in terrible is facing terrible stress. The U.S. economy is not doing well at all. Trump is manipulating the markets right now. They're speaking of some sort of agreement, which is so far there's no indication of us moving in that direction. But even these manipulations, at the end of the day, George, they're going to make things worse, because when you artificially bring down the price of, let's say, oil, even though it's paper oil, it's not the spot market, but you are increasing demand. You are preventing, especially when he keeps saying that this is going to end soon, companies who want to invest or increase production, then they're going to refrain from doing so. So in a sense, in the long run, what he's doing is he's going to make the crisis even worse when the manipulation no longer works. But I think it's quite clear that if there is war, that it means that he is not in charge. And I think everyone across the world sees him as a weak president. We saw when he went to Beijing, there was no joint statement. We saw the Russians and the Chinese had a joint statement. We saw all of his claims about what President Xi said in private to be false. The Chinese did not confirm any of the claims made by the Americans. Things are not going well at any level. And George, I think that what they do not understand, or maybe they do understand, but this is a sort of a final roll of the dice. They may not comprehend that the Iranians are prepared to suffer. The Iranians are prepared to accept the pain and the hardship of this starvation siege because they know that this is a fight for their survival. They know that because of their support for the Palestinian people, the Americans, the Europeans, the West wants to wipe them out. So they know that there is no way that they can appease the Americans and remain standing. So they have to be steadfast. On the other hand, the entire world, their suffering is increasing by the day, and soon it will become much worse. And they're all going to be asking themselves, why do we have to suffer for the Zionist regime, for this genocidal regime? Americans are going to ask themselves, why do we have to suffer? And I actually think that all of this is going to make things much worse for the Israeli regime in the United States itself in the coming months and years. In fact, I may be wrong, you may disagree, but I think that Congressman Massey's defeat at the hands of Israel is in fact bad news for the Israeli regime, because this is going to create greater anger about the Israeli regime, more awareness across the country about the Israeli regime. And when the election comes, the Republicans, which their supporters percentage-wise are still a larger segment of them support the Israeli regime, they're going to be defeated even more badly because of events like what we saw with Congressman Massey. I think that all of these are bad signs. I think the Israeli regime is miscalculating from beginning to end. They miscalculated in Gaza. They're miscalculating in their genocidal assault on Lebanon. They're miscalculating in trying to continue the war with Iran. They're miscalculating by antagonizing young Americans. And this is going to ultimately bring about their downfall in the United States.
No, I don't disagree at all. Now, the last time we spoke, I asked you about the shoe that hadn't dropped, namely the Yemen. But there's indications today that if the U.S. does return to the scene of its crimes and begin again a genocidal assault, that this time, and with all the strategic implications, Yemen will be on the side of the resistance. Can you confirm that, and what might that look like?
Well, as you know, Yemen was always with the resistance, and so was Iraq. But in the previous war, the Iranians did not want to escalate too far. They wanted to manage escalation. And so they felt that there was no need for, the alliance felt that there was no need for Yemen to get involved. In the case of Iraq, the resistance in Iraq did get involved, but to a degree. But from my understanding, if there is a renewal of war, if there is another aggression by the Israelis and the Americans, Yemen will become deeply involved. They will have a major impact on the battlefield and on the global economy. And the resistance in Iraq is going to be far more active and far more assertive than they were during the 39 days of onslaught. In addition to that, again, my understanding from what I'm hearing, the Iranians are going to hit much harder, and they're going to be more decisive, and no punches will be pulled. So, in a sense, the battle ahead is going to be more decisive than the 39 days of war. And I don't see the United States winning this war, and I don't see the Israeli regime winning. But, George, if Trump and Netanyahu target Iranian critical infrastructure, which is highly probable, because after all, these are barbaric animals. As I said, there's a starvation. They're preventing medicine from getting into Iran right now, actively doing so. Western media is completely silent because they're owned by the Epstein class. Although Sky News, maybe you saw the reporter who asked the question of Admiral Cooper about the school. I applaud that reporter for his courage, but in general, Sky News and the rest of them, they're useless. But that reporter, it took courage for him to do that. I advise people to watch it, but to take a look. But if they attack Iran's critical infrastructure, Iran will retaliate. And the Israeli regime's critical infrastructure will be targeted and destroyed. And the critical infrastructure of the regimes in the Persian Gulf who are complicit in the war will be destroyed. We are nearing the month of June. All people have to do is go right now and look at the weather in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi or elsewhere and see that the weather there is very, very, very difficult to tolerate unless you're in a very good car or your cooling system is working very well at home. If there's no electricity and no water, the country is finished. People will have to immediately go to Oman or to Iraq. They'll have to empty the country, whether it's American forces or whether it's the royal family or anyone else. So the critical infrastructure in Iran, if it's struck, Iran retaliates, that means these regimes in the Persian Gulf will probably collapse. And then that means that in future there won't be any oil or natural or LNG or anything else for the global market. So what Trump is doing is he's playing with fire. Already the situation for the global economy and the American economy is terrible. But what he and Netanyahu are pushing for is a global economic depression far worse than the 1930s in the previous century.
Now, finally, Professor, I saw you say today, I was a little surprised because it's the first difference I've ever had with you. You said that you had never been a fan of Ahmadinejad, the former president of Iran, twice president. I actually quite liked him and I interviewed him once. But I think we're both agreed that the attempt by the US briefings to media to paint Ahmadinejad as a traitor to Iran, who was somehow involved in a regime change plot which would have benefited himself and the puppet masters in Tel Aviv and the United States. Tell the viewers, if you would, about that and how it's being viewed in Iran.
Well, my criticism of former President Ahmadinejad has largely to do with internal politics. That he was very divisive in general, which I think a president should refrain from being. But also he did not listen to. He made a lot of decisions without consulting experts. That's my opinion. But yes, the New York Times, that article, I think, is just sheer nonsense. If indeed former President Ahmadinejad is a CIA asset, why would the CIA put his name out there in public? Why would they tell the New York Times that he is our asset? That basically is telling anyone across the world who is contemplating working for the CIA or who actually is working for the CIA that they better do something to save themselves, because they could be handed over to or their names could be revealed at any moment. So it doesn't make sense for the CIA to give out his name. Second of all, what is the evidence of him being involved in some plot against the country. If he is truly a traitor that they say he is, they don't provide any evidence. The article is just saying that Ahmadinejad was they were going to kill the leader and Ahmadinejad was going to take over. Where is the evidence? Because at the end of the day, Iran has a constitution. Iran has we have a very strong civil society. State institutions in Iran are real and meaningful. We saw the martyrdom of leaders both during the 12-day war and this war, and nothing happened. Why? Because our constitution works. This, I think, this very article is full of Orientalist notions. Where in a place like Iran, in an Eastern despotic regime, as they would like to see it, the rule of law means nothing. State institutions mean nothing. One despot just replaces another. That's how the Western elites like to introduce or to describe leaders from the rest of the world, from the global South. You know, strong men. Whether it's Russia or whether it's China or whether it's Iran or anywhere else, any country that they do not like, they delegitimize them and introduce those and describe those societies as societies that have no state institutions, have no legitimate constitution, and if it does have a constitution, it doesn't really mean anything, which is all nonsense. And this either shows a major lack of understanding by the New York Times, Western intelligence agencies, or whoever is behind this article, which is probably out there to create division in Iran, which no one takes it seriously here. I haven't seen anyone take it seriously. But also, I think, in addition to that, it just shows how the New York Times is such a discredited news organization.
Yeah.
That if they do indeed have, they're just basically giving out what the intelligence services in the United States are handing over to them without even thinking, why would the CIA, let's assume that the CIA, they really believe that the CIA sincerely gave this information to them. Why would the CIA do that? What is the agenda of the CIA? So nothing makes sense in this. It is just propaganda, but in my opinion, it's deeply Orientalist, it is racist, and it shows a clear lack of understanding about the sophisticated nature of Iranian civil society, of the constitution and state institutions, and of course, the role that Iranian civil society and ordinary people play. When the leader was martyred, we had for a full week, we had a leadership council, a leadership council, until we could get a new leader. The country was at war. They fought. State institutions worked well in accordance with the constitution, and when a new leader came to power, it continued to function well. I think that shows that the Iranian constitution works magnificently well, and therefore, what the New York Times says either, again, shows how ignorant they are about Iran and how racist and Orientalist they are about Iran in putting out this sort of propaganda, which no one in Iran takes seriously.
Actually, your constitution works a lot better than the American constitution is working right at this moment. We'll be taking a deep dive on Sunday into the big summit in Beijing between Putin and Xi Jinping. But preliminarily, what were your thoughts as you saw it, and have you had a chance to look at their joint declaration yet, Professor?
Well, George, the joint declaration, I think, was very good for the global South, for the Islamic Republic of Iran, for the axis of resistance. It was not good news for the United States. It was not good news for the empire. It was not good news for the Israeli regime. And the very fact that Trump's trip came right after the Iranian foreign minister's trip, and then right before the Russian president's trip, I think says a great deal. First of all, it shows that the power has transitioned already to Asia, and that Trump is clearly not the equal of the Chinese president. But second of all, it shows that the Chinese are in full coordination, or at least they're highly coordinating their efforts and their positions with the Iranians and the Russians. And that should be something that the Americans think about a bit more carefully. The United States is losing ground, and if they start another war, it is going to get much worse, and it's going to get much worse, much faster than before. George, if the United States attacks Iran again, Iran will be relentless. And if the United States runs out of ammunition, they shouldn't expect Iran to stop fighting. The Iranians will stop fighting only when all of their objectives are achieved. The same is true with Yemen, the same is true with Iraq, and the same is true with the resistance in Lebanon. At the end of the day, the Iranians have demands that have to be met. The control over the Strait of Hormuz will remain Iranian. Iran's sovereignty will have to be preserved, and Iranian allies across the region have to live in peace. And until that happens, the United States is going to have serious trouble in the Strait of Hormuz.
Professor Marandi, as always, a tour de force. Thank you for joining us on the mother of all talk shows, Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi, Professor of English Literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. A quick break, then it's your call. Stay tuned. Fabulous. Two great calls in a row there. One from California, one from Orlando. I think that Japan is walking on extremely thin ice in the provocations that they are currently allowing the US to manipulate them into making. I've spent a lot of time in China. I was there just a couple of weeks ago. There is visceral feelings about Japan in China. Of all of the countries of the world, China will never, ever, ever, ever forgive what Japan did to the Chinese people. They murdered more than 20 million Chinese. The war, which for us started in 1939 and for you started considerably more than that, further on than that. Japan invaded China in 1931 and didn't leave until their defeat in 1945. They further invaded other parts of China in 1936 and they killed 20 million Chinese people.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Is Volodymyr Zelensky corrupt? Is the Pope a Catholic? Do bears defecate in the woods? You can vote yes or no on Telegram. t.me/George Galloway, on X, on the YouTube community poll, and on the YouTube stream. If you are watching on the YouTube stream, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you're in the advance card, you can vote at patreon.com/George Galloway. There's a legend on the line. Better take him. Big Terence in Reading on the bricks. Go ahead, Tel.
Good evening, Mr. Galloway, and good tidings to you and your family, and all the people on the Rumble Room where I'm in. They all think the world of you. Regarding the economic situation with BRICS, Brazil has obviously got to be in there, although there are a lot of Zionists in Brazil. Russia, obviously. China, obviously. I'm not too fussed on India, to be honest with you. They've shown their hand, as have the Saudi Arabians and all the rest of the rabble around that area who have sided with the paedophilic monsters of America. And I see it really, really taking off. The dollar's finished. I'd like your opinion on that, but I think the dollar's finished. But more importantly, the honesty and the integrity coming from Tehran, Yemen, the Lebanese fighters who are putting up a stern, stiff test. And even in Syria, they're fighting that head chopper. But regarding the financial development of the new system, I think BRICS minus Saudi Arabia and the Middle Eastern mob have showed their hand. I think it's a definite goer with some reservations from India, and only a few about Brazil, a couple, because there's lots of Zionists there, but none whatsoever about Brazil or Iran, Persia, as I call it. What say you?
Well, of course, you didn't mince your words. I won't go all the way with you for a variety of reasons, but the truth is that the core of the BRICS is Russia and China, and it is increasingly true that Iran is right at the core also. There are peripheral members, but it's better that the periphery comes to you than goes to your enemy, even if it's got a foot in both camps. It's better that they see the way the wind's blowing and decide they need to have a foot in your camp, because the future belongs to that camp. So I wouldn't be kicking anybody out of the BRICS. The current presidency is India's, so I'll be diplomatic in regard to that. In any case, India is an incredibly important country. Whether we like the Prime Minister or not, whether we like their attitude on this or that, is in a sense lesser in importance than the fact that India wants to be part of the BRICS, wants to be part of the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where more than half the world's population and way over half of the world's wealth is to be found. The truth is, and you know this, Terry, but for others, let me restate it. What they call the golden billion, which is us, is of course not all that golden and isn't a billion. At least half, maybe 3/4 of the billion are living in poverty. The latest statistics on child poverty in Britain would shame any decent government, which is why it hasn't shamed our government. The children of working parents, two working parents, are 6 times more likely to be living in poverty than they were 25 years ago. This is a level of misery in the golden billion countries, which is repeated in virtually all of the countries of that 1 billion region. But there's 8 billion people in the world. So the 7 billion who are not a part of the golden billion are where it's at. It's where the resources are. It's where the economic demand is and will increasingly be. It will be the multiplier in economic terms. You're not going to get the Americans to start building bridges and highways and infrastructural repairs and maintenance and new high-speed rail, and you're not going to get that because structurally their system is just not prepared to do that. Where are you going to build the highways, the bridges, the roads, the railways? Where are you going to build the new dams and all the things that generate wealth, produce wealth, real wealth? In the 7 billion. In the global south, though not all of it is in the south any more than the golden billion is entirely in the west. But roughly speaking, the global south is where it's at. And who are the kingpins in the global south? Is it Macron? Is it Starmer? Is it Donald Trump? Or is it the two men that have been in conclave in Beijing this last 2 days? Thank you very much, Terence. Some comments now. If you want to leave comments on YouTube, scan the QR code now, leave a comment, and I'll try and read it out. Sammy Git 9486 says the massive fiasco proves yet again you can't vote your way out. And M. Smith QG10H sends $4.99. Thank you for that. Says this kind of corruption isn't new. Nancy Pelosi is somehow the best stockbroker on the planet. It was her husband. And Catherine Foley says dumbass Trump is so compromised he'll do what he's told. Alas, I'm sure that's true. Truthseeker 9958, it is heartwarming to see Presidents Xi and Putin together. True friendship reflects respect and sincerity. And Mom in Bama 15 says, Marandi, please stay safe. I feel like by Friday night Trump will bomb. No sign of pulling away. Well, let's go to Colorado, where Jim wants to talk about the upcoming midterms. Jim, most welcome. What would you like to say?
George, reporting here from, I can only call it too crazy for Bellevue. I mean, these people are going to go on and on, these reporters about the midterms. And do you remember what Joe Biden said when he got elected? He said, nothing will fundamentally change. And these two parties, the more they get...
He was right.
Yeah. The more they get closer and closer to each other, the mirror images, the more hostile they get to each other. And these reporters on CNN are going to have all these maps with red and blue and purple. And go back to kindergarten. Here, Social Security sends out a memo that in 2032, they are going to have to implement a 24 to 28% cut if nothing is drastically done starting now. And they put this out 8 months ago. Okay, it might as well be a state secret. You can Google it, and find out, Money Magazine online covered it. And, you hear nothing about this. We have graduation time now, right? All these corporate clowns are going out, and they start talking about AI, how wonderful it's going to be. And the crowd start booing, and they can't understand it. When the layoffs are already happening and the companies actually announce, this is because of AI. And they're building these things in the desert, right? They take a ton of water. They're going to shoot up everybody's electricity. And now they're saying they're cutting off the city of Lake Tahoe. Nevada was supplying Lake Tahoe, California, with power. And they said it was only supposed to be temporary, but they never give a date. They just sent them a letter now. And 50,000 people. And they're building, they're going to make more money building these massive things. One of them in Utah, another desert state, is 3 times the size of Manhattan. You might have heard about that one. This guy who was on it used to be on some game show. He's a billionaire. Yeah. And he said to Tucker Carlson, a great interview, he says, well, the people voted for it. And Tucker said, "You have a plebiscite, a ballot initiative?" He said, "No, the county commissioner." Yeah, 3 guys said this is okay, and everybody in that town or the county can go booger themselves. And when does this stop? And I'm just, like I say, I'm just beside
I'll only stop when you get. I'll only stop when you get rid of them, Jim. We get the governments that we deserve, that we vote for. We didn't try hard enough. We didn't argue well enough. We didn't put up credible enough alternative candidates and arguments. And if Tweedledee and Tweedledum, or two cheeks of the same ass, are battling it out in the midterms, well, that's our fault. We could change that. You know, your country was once ruled by a despotic English king until you took your destiny into your own hands and rose up in a revolutionary war and changed everything utterly. Well, you know, if you could do that then, what can't you do now? And that, what I'm saying, does not just apply to your country, but to mine and to every other. Thanks, Jim, for that call. Now, a big salute to some of tonight's top Moats supporters who've been backing the program through the Moats.tv website. Vin Ferguson, Alexander Visram, Gerard Magari, Annette Carpian, and Peter Milosevic. A big thanks to all of you. Now, I've got an important announcement to make. This was a suggestion made by our good friend Donna in Panama. I'm going to start once a month having a video conference with our top donors of that month. It'll last for 90 minutes, once a month. You can feed back, I can feed back to you, so that we improve the personal relations, and maybe it'll even improve the level and consistency of donations. So stand by for more information on that. You can visit moats.tv right now or any time this evening and click on Donate Now. That button's everywhere on the site. Donate whatever you can afford in any currency you like. One-off donations are always welcome, but you can also make a recurring donation to help keep the program strong and independent week after week. There's a wise man in Canada, at least one. His name is Lance, and he wants to talk about the Middle East. Welcome back, Lance.
Hey, how are you? I was listening to your thing about Japan and China, and I will say, Japan's posturing towards China. You were talking about demographically, Japan is the oldest country on Earth. So I don't know how they will invade everybody. They will have to manufacture more walkers and wheelchairs and canes if they're going to mount an invasion force. But besides that, I don't know. Anyway, well, they are capable of a lot of production, so who knows? But my thought is, on the Middle East, it seems right now, and for quite a long time, they've been running this sort of one of their color revolution scripts in Canada to kind of break off Western Canada. And of course, we have Trump's cabinet promising Western Canada riches. It's not unlike what went on in the Ukraine or went on in the Balkans, trying to turn people against their neighbors. And I feel like the long-term plan, you don't necessarily always agree with me on them, is to try to gradually destroy the Middle East and then sell Canada's resources to China, is what I think. So I feel like we're going to keep having little ceasefires or peace times, and Iran is going to be let to go long enough to let its guard down. It'll start again. I do feel like this is going to continue a long time, unfortunately.
Sure.
And
well,
if you look
the
at
Roman
the state
Empire,
of
the Roman Empire took a century to fall after its fall was clearly imminent. A century. And Eastern Rome, Constantinople, took 1,000 years to fall. 1,000 years after the fall of the Roman Empire in the West, the Eastern Roman Empire, until Mehmet invaded Constantinople, took 1,000 more years. So when I say the demise of the empire is imminent, I don't necessarily mean next week, Tuesday. These things are very slow to happen, even once their imminent decline and fall is clearly apparent. Now, the US and Canada, if you want to call the show, it's +1 844 944 3344. UK and Ireland 08081 965522, and the worldwide number 0044 203 966 2625. Well, let me take a quick break, then it's your calls, right up to the legend, Judge Napolitano coming up. Stay tuned. We have to rage against the dying of this light. Many of you, I know you're saying it already, there was never much light, that England was not the green and pleasant land you are making it out to be, and we never were free, and we never were a democratic country, and so on. Of course, I hear and recognize all of these points of view. But I grew up in what turned out to be a brief moment of social democracy in this country. It didn't go far enough, but it is an incomparable land to the land that we live in today, of brand new council houses, with your father working in a factory at the end of the road that the government had forced the company to redirect to, with a health centre at the other end of the road where you got free milk, orange juice, malt, a free NHS if you were clever enough, free university, completely free, and an era of free speech. Of course, the television was owned by just a few oligarchs, and if you didn't cut the mustard with them, you would never be seen on television. But nobody would ever dream of telling you that you were under arrest because of a placard that you held up. Nobody would ever dream that 90-year-old ladies, that blind men in wheelchairs, that 80-year-olds in their scores, maybe hundreds, would end up on terrorism charges in Britain for expressing support on a piece of cardboard for an organization of peaceful, non-violent, civil disobedience people.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's go to Kingston, where Sal wants to talk about AIPAC and how to counter them. Sal, welcome. What do you want to say?
Good evening, George. I am thinking, I'm sure you've seen the impact of the Lego videos. So that to me is thinking outside the box, yes, given the fact that the media is totally owned overwhelmingly by you-know-who, and we sometimes feel like hopeless. But I started thinking about, I'm sure you remember that. I'm sure you're a music man. Nelson Mandela concert, if you remember it, Dire Straits and all that, and Simple Minds. People like yourself, even your guests like Professor Marandi and so many others like Larry Johnson and Scott Ritter, you're like rock stars these days, if we draw that musical analogy. So I was thinking, why not, thinking outside the box, somebody of your stature, even in a place like Russia where it can be done, to arrange a concert like that for awareness. And I'm sure you have enough great musicians like Roger Waters, who I hope we'll see more of him on your show, or Cat Stevens. And also starting to, like the last time, hopefully people can donate to this. And that could even eventually be something like an anti-AIPAC kind of fund. That I called a long time ago and discussed this about people unifying beyond their whether they're right or left, but based on principles. So I know it might be a desperate try, George, but I couldn't help putting that forward to you. If you were to arrange a Nelson
Mandela. Yeah. Well, not only do I remember the Nelson Mandela birthday concert, I was one of the key organizers of it. I was responsible for its moving to Wembley Stadium when the prevailing view at the outset was to hold it in the Albert Hall. But I recognized that Mandela had by then become such a global icon. His 70th birthday was sufficiently iconic to take the gamble of booking an entire stadium, Wembley Stadium. I was present when Tracy Chapman, and then unknown young black woman with a simple acoustic guitar, was milling around behind the curtain, and I had no idea who she was. But 2 minutes later, the whole world knew who she was once she had started strumming and powerfully singing that we were talking about a revolution. So I'm well seized of the value of that kind of spectacle, that kind of agitation. But the truth is, an anti-APAC event such as that, an initiative such as that, has to come from the United States. It's not the business of Russia or China or wherever to intervene in American politics in that way. And a second point I need to make, very melancholy point indeed, Sal, that Roger Waters is indeed a magnificent musician, but he's 80 years old, and most of my favorites are 80 years old and even more. We need, and you run out, by the way, you run out of names after Roger Waters, after Paul Weller, after a very few others from that generation. What we need now is kneecap. What we need now is the new zeitgeist, appealing to young concert goers. And they are as abundant in the United States as they are anywhere else. So it's a great idea, but I can't organize it, and we'll need to do bigger and wider in terms of the purview of the musicians that come forward. There'll be musicians, artists, bands that I and you have never heard of yet, and it's them that have got to step forward. Sorry to make you feel old, Sal. Charlie is in England, in Dorset, on Starmer. Is he still there, Charlie?
Yes, I am, George. Hello. How are you keeping? All right?
All good, sir. All good. What would you like to say?
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you for winning Birmingham. Secondly, I pray for you and your family, and especially Seyed Marandi. And to say that Starmer, we know, is a crook and a nobody. But I like to what you think. Can we trust Andy Burnham? Because I feel that he's another Israeli.
Yeah, he's a chancer. He's a phony. He plays the man of the people, though born in leafy Cheshire and educated at Cambridge University. He plays a man of the people, but he has been pursuing anti-people politics for at least 20 years, if not 25. He was a member of the Blair and Brown governments. He's a lifelong member of the Labour Friends of Israel. He supported all of the post-Thatcherism that was embodied in the timbers of the Blair and Brown government, and I very much hope that he comes a cropper. I recognize the despair amongst people about Keir Starmer and the need to get rid of them, but it would profit you nothing to get rid of Keir Starmer and appoint his ventriloquist's dummy, and that's all that Andy Burnham would be. Thanks for that, Chaz. Peace B4 says it took our forefathers over a decade to step up and put a stop to Hitler's Third Reich, and Japan, it's about time that we put a stop to genocidal Israel. And Jack Klugman 107, great name, says, has Starmer said anything about the UK citizens on the flotilla kidnapped? Well, Jack, not just kidnapped, but physically assaulted by a member of Netanyahu's cabinet, Ben-Gvir, on camera today. The Italian Prime Minister has spoken angrily. The South Korean President has spoken angrily. The Spanish government has spoken angrily. But I've heard nothing from Keir Starmer. If you haven't seen that video yet, you really must look at it. Ben-Gvir ritually humiliated the people who'd been kidnapped in international waters on a peace flotilla and physically assaulted one of them on camera. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything quite like it. We've become used to his naked brutality against Palestinian prisoners. But here were internationals being humiliated, degraded, and assaulted by an Israeli minister. And so far, nobody has done F all about it. Speaks volumes, truly. Paul Bedson, Workers' Party, Great Britain. Who's going to stand for the Workers' Party in Macclesfield? I think that's under consideration, Paul, at the minute. Stand by for decisions on that. And Nomad Hick 567 says, stupid poll question really, George. May as well ask, is water wet? I don't set the poll questions. Cecilia is in London on the Thomas Massey defeat. Cecilia, welcome.
Hello, George. Thanks for taking my call. A few days ago, I heard a commentator that I listened to many times called Alex Craner saying that Massey was very popular, but that his popularity had unbelievably taken a dip in the service, and that he knew that couldn't be possible. And he said that they were obviously rigged. And he says the same people who rig the surveys can rig the elections. So, well, I think that given what you just said, something like that has happened. And regarding the November elections, I remember that Christopher Hedges said either on your show or somewhere else, I'm sorry, I can't remember, that maybe they never happen. So why something similar cannot happen in November?
Well, it's unlikely. The zeitgeist is so overwhelmingly against Trump now that it would risk whatever social peace still exists in the United States to an unacceptable degree. But who counts the votes is decisive. Who delivers the midnight dump of mail-in ballots, as I know to my own personal cost, is decisive. And everyone will have to be doubly on their guard. I'm in no doubt whatsoever that Trump was cheated of the presidential election in 2020, and I'm equally in no doubt whatsoever that Trump has cheated Massey. He has 2020'd Massey in the 4th District of Kentucky last night. Thanks, Cecilia. Now, helping to keep the Moats engine running tonight, I've got to thank Mahmoud Ahmed, Altania Martinez, James Glass, John Tehan, and Dennis Freeman, and everybody else who has given lesser sums, but a big thanks to those on the wall of fame. Please go to moats.tv and leave your donation, even if it's just £1, €1, or $1. Prince is in Texas on the Kentucky election. On you go, Prince.
Hey, George, how you doing, sir?
Good, thank you. What do you want to say?
Yes, so about that election yesterday, that was, to me, that was the death of electoral politics in the United States and in the West. And no disrespect to You, George, I think if there was anybody worthy of being a British Prime Minister, I think it's you. But I think at this point, the British politics is useless, just like every other satellite state in the West, because basically it's clear that all of the states have no independence. They're all just puppets. They all take orders from the same. I mean, if you can watch your citizens being humiliated on public in camera and there's nothing anybody can do, then that's not a government. So it's basically useless. But about the election yesterday, my biggest concern is I was talking with somebody and they're like, oh, if we had elected Kamala Harris, things would have been better. And I'm asking, better for who and for what? Because the point is, you see, even the so-called progressives, people like AOC and the rest of the clowns whom they call themselves the squad, they had more problems with Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, than they have with people like Lindsey Graham. Because, somebody like Massey had stood on principles. Look at somebody like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. These were the people who had the president, yet all they had to do was just bow. I had no doubt in my mind that Candace Owens would have been a Secretary of State if she had just sat quiet. But because these people stood on principles, they're willing to forfeit that relationship, risk being assassinated, risk being sued left and right with lawfare, just to stand on principle. But yet people like the Democrats, like people like AOC and so-called the liberals in your country, all of these people are here, they're pretentious. I think those are the biggest people we have to worry about, actually. I'm not even worried about the so-called conservatives.
Well, I agree. I absolutely agree with everything you just said. And Malcolm X pointed us in this direction when he talked about the wolf in sheep's clothing. He talked about the difference between the fox and the wolf. When the wolf approaches you, you know its intention is to kill you and eat you. But the fox looks like it's smiling. And it's only then that you discover that it regards you as its dinner just the same. And Democrats and liberals and social democrats and the plethora of pretenders on the political spectrum, they are merely the foxes. And Lindsey Graham's and the rest, Lady G, as you put her peerlessly, they're the obvious wolves. But the difference between being attacked by the wolf and the fox is not great in the end result. Now you can download the Moats podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. You can listen to it at moats.tv. Also, once you've listened, please don't forget to leave a review. This week, the podcast is in the top 10 for politics in Croatia, the UAE, Nigeria, Peru, and Kenya, and the top 30 for politics in Jordan, Malaysia, South Africa, Oman, and Qatar. It's simply wonderful. I will be at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum very soon, and Candace Owens is the star attraction. I'm very much hoping to meet her, make her acquaintance, very much hoping I might be able to interview her, or we can interview each other. She is a person of the deepest held principle. May, a legend, is in Oklahoma and wants to talk about Trump. Well, we seem always, May, you and I, to be talking about this monster, but he's getting more and more monstrous.
Absolutely, George. I'm glad to talk to you. I hope everybody's okay. And much love to you, your team, especially the beautiful and brilliant Gayatri. But my question today is a question that we asked on Trump's Magic 8 Ball on Facebook. Is Trump the Antichrist? And I wanted to get your opinion. My opinion is it's a tie between him and Netanyahu and is rubble. So what do you think?
Well, I'm loath to make a judgment that is God's to make, but the Antichrist was prophesied to be a man, a powerful and wealthy man coming from the West. It didn't actually say that he had blonde hair, but it did say that he was fair of complexion. And Donald Trump meets those as well as 100 other criterion of the Antichrist. But if you're asking me which I think is the actual devil, I think it's got to be Netanyahu. And we may be about to see that all over again. May, thanks for that call. And I'll pass on your good wishes to my good wife, who is in the doorway now, will be with you shortly, but after we have had the great Judge Andrew Napolitano. Here's some more comments. Piano Man 9685, Massey lost to Miriam Adelson and Zionist ammunition, their pen and pocketbooks. And Teresa Steele 5327, Massey and Taylor Green, I love them. And Mouse SF says tacky, TACI, equals Trump always cashing in. That's a good one. And Anna Sabo 3741 says Trump's corruption is sure to star in the next Lego video. These Lego videos are quite remarkable, I must say. Nikia 6571 says, I think the defeat of Thomas Massey will ironically speed up the decline of the USA because of the extent of unchecked power. Let me take a quick break because we can't keep the judge waiting. Here comes the judge right after this.
The king of Saudi Arabia, King Faisal, at this time said something incredible. You can't imagine it being said nowadays by any of these Arab leaders. He said, you are the ones who can't live without oil. Our ancestors lived on dates, and we can easily go back and live that way.
Yeah, but you can't live without oil, just for completion. Now, there was a man, a real king, a real Arab, a real Muslim, King Faisal, who quadrupled the price of oil to the Westerners who needed it, in defense of the Palestinian people, in opposition to the settler apartheid state of Israel and its land grabs. How different. You know, I've never admitted this to you, but I was actually well old enough to remember that historical fact that you have just cited. And I was, in fact, quite prominent politically at that very moment. And I wrote about it in my audiobook, Street Fighting Man, in some detail. So I'm bitterly aware of how the Arab world in 1973 has declined as I look at the pitiful performance of the Arab leaders who can only convene to denounce Iran for retaliating to a massive American and Israeli attack upon themselves, but couldn't lift a finger even to deliver bread to the starving Palestinians in Gaza.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Here comes the judge, the wisest jurist in Christendom, and an all-round great guy, brilliant commentator, brilliant jurist, unaccountably overlooked by those who have no wish to see justice in the United States, at least not to see it prevail. Judge Andrew Napolitano, Your Excellency, thank you very much for joining us. You're always very kind with your time. Can I begin by asking you about what I think, on the face of it, is the theft of American democracy, the theft of the 4th District of Kentucky by Donald Trump and the Israel lobby last night?
George, it's always a pleasure. You're very kind and generous to invite me to your show, which is, of course, world renowned and universally appreciated. I have been crushed over the loss of my friend Thomas Massie. I go to bed early, like many of us in this business do, and I fully expected to wake up this morning and find out that he had won. And of course, he lost about 55% for the other fellow to about 45% for Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie is the foremost defender of the American Constitution with fidelities to first principles of maximum individual liberty, limited government, and peace of anybody in the United States Congress since Ron Paul left. Thomas Massie, even though one of Ron's sons is in the Senate, Thomas Massie is really, and has been, and will continue to be till the end of his term, the Ron Paul, the Congressman Ron Paul of today. This is not to put down Senator Rand Paul at all, but Thomas is so fearless, so courageous, so steadfast that he was a little too much for the Zionist lobby to bear. Think about it. The Zionists control about 90% of the American Congress. The great Pat Buchanan used to refer to the Congress as Israeli-occupied territory. That sounds like a George Galloway line, honestly. And they couldn't bear to have one single articulate person challenging them. So they spent $35 million US, a record for a primary election in a small rural district. They spent $35 million to defeat him because the president is so thin-skinned he cannot tolerate articulate criticism. Where Thomas Massie goes from here, I don't know, but he has too much energy, too big a heart, too much devotion to first principles to sit back and do nothing. But of course, he'll probably drive the administration crazier than he has been doing in the next 8 months. Another way to look at him is he is the George Galloway of the House of Representatives. I am thinking of some of your fabulous commentary on the floor of the House of Commons.
Most kind, thank you, Your Honour. It is telling, isn't it, that the lobby could not be satisfied with just 90% of hirelings, that they could not accept even a single voice like Thomas Massie. Is that a show of strength by them or essentially a show of weakness?
I think it's a show of weakness. I think they overplayed their hand. I wouldn't be surprised if Thomas Massie's, the person who defeated him, is defeated in November. The same thing happened in New Jersey, where they spent a fraction of that, about 2.5 or 3 million, in a Democratic primary to defeat a former Democratic congressman trying to make a comeback because he said, I'm not in favor of blank checks for Israel. I'm in favor of examining each request on its merits. That's all he said. And for that, they buried him. To their dismay, this resulted in an AOC hard left progressive getting in instead, who doesn't believe that the Israeli government is a lawful regime. So they shot themselves in the foot. Now, that didn't happen here with Mr. Galloway, the fellow who defeated Thomas Massie. But there's a lot about him yet to come out. He buried and destroyed his military records. He refused to debate Thomas Massie. He stands for nothing other than what Donald Trump wants.
Is there grounds for thinking that the mail-in ballots were dodgy? After all, Trump himself railed against the mail-in ballot phenomenon, from which I've suffered myself more than once, I must tell you. The midnight dump, 2 a.m. dump of mailed-in votes that were surprisingly all against one. Is there any suspicion in your mind as a distinguished judge that there may not only have been the purchasing of this seat, but the rigging of this election?
I don't know if Congressman Massey is going to challenge the outcome. It would be uncharacteristic of him to do so. But if he does, there are 10,000 of these suspicious mail-in ballots, just slightly more than the margin of votes between the two of them. It would be quite a political earthquake if it turned out that those ballots were fraudulent. But knowing Thomas Massey the way I do, I don't think he's going to challenge it. I would encourage him to do so if there is evidence there. He and his people and their lawyers in Kentucky will have to look at this.
Now, Excellency, the big story for me on the if you like, the judicial front, the legal front, is the extraordinary deal that Donald Trump's attorney struck with the IRS, the tax collector in the United States, which is a double whammy, really. Trump gets a fortune, undreamt of fortune for a man to have to spend on his friends, and also gets immunity from any auditing of his tax affairs or those of his sons. Past, present, or future audits will now not happen. This must have raised an eyebrow in your chambers.
This is unconstitutional, unethical, and unenforceable. It's unconstitutional because the federal courts in America can only hear real cases where there's real adversity between the parties. When the president sues an entity that works for him and whose bosses he designates, there's no adversity. It's unconstitutional because only the Congress can appropriate funds. The president and the Department of Justice can't just take $1.8 billion and decide we're going to give it to the president to give away. It's unethical for the Attorney General. I've said this earlier. The Attorney General should be disbarred as a lawyer. It's unethical for the Attorney General, who's actually the acting Attorney General, which is part of the reason this is unethical, for him to permit people that work for Donald Trump to be the lawyers against him and to sign this deal without the approval of a judge. Why is he doing it? Because he desperately wants to be appointed the Attorney General of the United States. Instead, he's going to lose his license to practice law. And it's unenforceable because no litigant can negotiate for immunity from prosecution. There's only two ways you can get immunity. One is a pardon, and of course he can't pardon himself. And the other is if it's signed by a federal judge. This was not signed by a judge. This was signed by a two-bit political hack, his own appointee as the acting Attorney General. George, the lawsuits have already been filed, even though the ink is not yet dry on this crazy agreement. The leading Republicans in the United States Senate have said this stinks. So I don't think it has a long shelf life.
He seems to be throwing caution to the wind, sir. I mean, I follow a site called Blue Whales, which covers stock market trading with a particular emphasis on insider trading and a particular emphasis on the Hill and on the White House. And I must tell you, I could scarcely believe what I was reading. Turns out that every 11 minutes, Donald Trump personally is making a stock market trade. And in example after example that Blue Whales have given, no sooner has he purchased a stock when he is out using the presidential pulpit and his daily, hourly press briefings. I don't know where he finds time to do anything other than talk to the media and do stock market trading. He's out punting the greatness of companies in whose stock he has just that minute invested, and his sons and him are reportedly making from the market manipulation surrounding the Iran war undreamt of fortunes. I just have this feeling of a man who, with nothing to lose, on a kind of supermarket sweep.
Well, they better keep that money in the bank, because they're going to end up surrendering it to the federal government when another president succeeds their father. This type of stock manipulation is not covered by the Supreme Court's opinion on immunity, because it's not an official function of the President of the United States. Most Americans are unaware of what you just described, George, but those of us who follow this for a living, as you do, realize that this is an extraordinary, long, regular, consistent, systematic series of acts of corruption that make Joe Biden's son look like Mother Teresa.
Yeah. It's a fact. We thought that Hunter Biden was as venal as it could get, but he seems like a regular Joe compared to Trump's sons, who have become billionaires. It's said that the long one, the youngest one, Barron, it's said that he is a billionaire already, and he's barely 21 years old.
This is true. This is true. I'm sure that his father or his father's people are telling him, you got to do this at such and such a moment, because right after you do this, your father's going to say that, whatever it is. I mean, I'm obviously not aware of their communication, but the boy, who is a student here in New York City, has made a fortune on his stock trades, timed coincidentally to decisions by the federal government, which are instigated and caused by his father. This is all going to come back to haunt them. They can be as happy as they want now, but this is not long-lived. The American people will see through this, and a future Justice Department will see through it. Federal judges will see through it as soon as this manages to get before them. The president is still killing people on speedboats in the Caribbean and in the Eastern Pacific because he says they're drug dealers. Well, guess what? Two of the survivors, who are poor, illiterate, itinerant fishermen, have hired major American law firms to sue the government for attempted murder. This will expose a tremendous amount of these shenanigans. Soon, somebody who lost money on these stock deals will sue the people who made money on the stock deals, and some of those people will be named Trump.
Finally, Your Excellency, and I declare an interest, Alex Saab is a friend of mine. He was a high official of President Maduro's government in Venezuela, a Venezuelan diplomatic passport holder, a Russian citizen, together with his good wife and 8 children. He's one of our people in that regard, Judge. He was deported and is now in Miami as a result of a secret deal between the Trump administration and the interim pro tem administration of Delcy Rodriguez in Venezuela. On the face of it, there is no locus for this transfer, and I fear for his life in Miami Penitentiary, as I fear for the life of President Maduro in a New York penitentiary, and his wife also. Can you tell us anything at all about these cases?
I don't know about the case of your friend. This is the first I've heard of it. The case against President Maduro is a farce. The principal witness against him is a former general in his own government who has pleaded guilty to drug dealing. And many of the charges against him do not implicate the United States judicial system. For example, one of the indictment charges is that he shipped cocaine from Caracas to Paris. Now, I don't know if he did it, but if he did, that has nothing to do with the United States of America and the American judicial system, and the federal courts don't have jurisdiction over it. This is just an example of the extremes to which the government went because the president was so adamant that they had to file an indictment against him because they had to justify the kidnapping. He's also in the hands of one of the best criminal defense lawyers in America, who was a former federal prosecutor, as many of these superb criminal defense men and women are. And I think he's got a chance of being acquitted. Finally, he's in favor of a judge. He's in front of a judge of whom the government is terrified because he's ruled against them so many times. A fearless, so he's in his 90s, but a fearless, truly fearless federal judge. So Maduro has a chance. What happened to him shouldn't have happened to anybody. It was a criminal act, but he has a chance in the American judicial system. Your friend, I don't know anything other than what you told me.
Well, speaking of men in their 90s, another friend of mine has just been indicted. Former President Raul Castro has been indicted by the United States, and they seek his transfer at the age of 94, and with the surname Castro. Are they serious? Are these just straw men that they are erecting? Can we expect a Maduro-type kidnap for Raul?
Yes, I think we can, because this has been the pet project of, you know who, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, who is also the American archivist, who is also the National Security Advisor. He's got so many jobs, he can't do any of them well, but this has been one of his pet projects. Former President Raul Castro ordered the shooting down of a plane which violated Cuban airspace, which refused orders to turn around and leave, and which was driven by CIA-funded and sponsored terrorists. The CIA there he is, a few years ago. The CIA-funded and sponsored terrorists had actually blown up a Cuban airliner, which resulted in the deaths of 76 people. These planes were taunting the government, and they had no idea what they were going to drop down. So he was well within his governmental authority to shoot the planes down. But in America, if the Secretary of State is named Rubio and the defendant's name is Castro, expect the worst.
I do. Your Excellency, Judge Andrew Napolitano, another master class from you on the mother of all talk shows. Thank you, and God bless you. Thanks.
It's a pleasure, George. I love you, George. It's great to be on with you.
Love you too. Thank
you
you so much, Judge. Jihad is in Los Angeles on Lebanon. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, George. Thank you for taking my call once again. You know, while this dance of Hormuz, as you once called it, is happening, the Lebanese people in South Lebanon are really suffering. There's over 1 million displaced, and the situation is very dire. And first, my question is, I would like to know from you, how do you see this playing out for the Lebanese? I, in the U.S., being of Lebanese descent and hailing from South Lebanon, am somewhat privileged being here. But other people are living in squalor, living on the streets, and their livelihoods have been totally destroyed. And I'd like to hear from you, where do you think this is going to progress, considering this dance of Hormuz that's taking place, and we're really getting nowhere till now. It's been, I don't know how long that this dance has been going on. And the other thing I'd like to discuss, after you maybe answer that point, is my interest in participating or volunteering my time and efforts, because I've done event management and that kind of thing in the past and organized and produced several events in the past, going off of what Sal had mentioned earlier, an anti-APAC initiative. I'm willing to donate my time and efforts towards such an initiative. And I feel
that's good. I hope people have listened to that. Seems to me an obvious no-brainer. It would likely take off, in my judgment, and I know a thing or two about these things. I can't obviously do it in the United States. I wouldn't be safe going to the United States. But those of you who are in the United States and who share this perspective should immediately get to work on this, and I hope people have heard this discussion. You say 1 million people are displaced in Lebanon. That is out of 5 million. So 20% of the population of Lebanon has been displaced by an Israeli invasion, and nobody is doing anything about it, least of all the Lebanese government. You ask me how it's likely to play out. I've got to tell you, the only way that the people of Lebanon will be protected from Netanyahu is by the Islamic Republic of Iran. They are the only people with the interests of the people of Lebanon in play in this whole picture. And you heard Professor Marandi earlier. There will be no peace between Iran, Israel, and the United States unless it's peace for everyone, unless the allies of Iran can live in peace and no longer persecuted, invaded, massacred. The massacres taking place in Lebanon every single day now are every bit as ugly and horrific as the massacres that were taking place daily, indeed still are on many days in the Gaza Strip itself. Whole families, mother, father, sons, daughters, in-laws, are being massacred in cars, in houses, and in the open air in Lebanon. And nobody is doing anything about it. And the only people who have their interests in their heart are the Iranians, as you heard from Professor Marandi tonight. I've got to cut you short, Jihad, because here's the woman without whom the news wouldn't be the news. Here's Gayatri. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, to honor the fantastic visit that President Putin has made to China, and the way he's been received by President Xi Jinping and the agreements they've made, I would like to read you an excerpt from a newspaper. For directing the transformation of China from a feudal society wrecked by war and bled by corruption into a unified, egalitarian state where nobody starves, and for reviving national pride and confidence so that China could stand up among the great power. Would you like to guess what newspaper that came from and when? This was written in The Economist. This was an obituary on the death of Mao in 1976.
Wow.
So it just goes to show how journalism used to be actual journalism, in which even at the height of the Cold War, they could be honest, assess and report respectfully to a rival, a true rival at the time. And seemingly it still is, because today there's no Western journalist who can report positively about China. First of all, they of course continue the smears, whether it's Hong Kong or Taiwan or Tibet or Xinjiang. If they must admit China is achieving something great, and great achievements they are making by the day, it seems. I mean, they are at 10G. I mean, in Britain, you're lucky if you get 3G on your mobile phone. They achieve, if I'm just looking at the recent newspaper headlines, this is just in a few hours that President Putin is in China. The Wall Street Journal says Xi Jinping is now the world leader he wanted to be, but it has come at a cost. Or CNN, 9 out of 10 families in China now owns a home. But is the property owning dream being tested? China this, China that, all its achievements, but at what cost? Now, to just give you a comparison about the situation of high-speed rail back home in Britain, the HS2, that famous high-speed train that's supposed to go from the capital city of London to the second city of the United Kingdom, Birmingham, and cut the travel time by 10 minutes or so.
11 minutes.
11 minutes, call it 11 minutes. Do you realize that it has taken 26 years now, and it will come to a cost of over $100 billion, whereas the Chinese are looking at this project and thinking, we can do that for $4 billion in 1 year, or probably less. So visit after Xi Jinping is going to be so busy. I mean, he's been receiving world leader after the other, and after this epic meeting with President Putin and the cooperation between Russia and China even more cemented, the next leader heading to China will be President Vučić of Serbia. And this is one to look out for as well, because Serbia and China have a very special relation too, and it is a model. It is a model relationship that they like to project between a European nation and China. So let's look how that goes in the next show.
Well, that was marvelous. I'm proud of you for that one. I could not believe my ears that was The Economist on the death of Mao. And if that was true on the death of Mao, as it was, imagine what it is now. Imagine an honest obituary. Oh, God grant him much longer life, of course, but an honest appraisal of Xi Jinping, the man who has created this wonderland, for that is what China is. It is a wonderland where almost everybody is a homeowner, where absolutely nobody is homeless, where nobody is without the basic essentials of life. You were just pointing out to me, as you encouraged me to get busy on them, how in every public space there are solar paneled outdoor exercise machines, every bit as good as you'd find in a private gym in any Western capital.
Yeah, paying big money.
And they're entirely free. And the solar power keeps you warm or cool when you need it. You can do everything from pull-ups to sit-ups to rowing machine. All the things you do in a private gym are publicly free in every park in China. The people, the pensioners, the life of the pensioners. I'm a pensioner, but I don't like to think of myself as one. I haven't yet joined the Tai Chi circles, but I marvel at them. Every day there's thousands of pensioners happily Tai Chiing in public spaces, again with instructors, completely free. China is a miracle. China is a wonderland, and it's got a red flag on it, and it's a socialist country. Which part of all of that, and the 50,000 miles of high-speed rail, which part of all of that do people not grasp? The superiority of China over the United States and Western Europe, all of Europe, is stunning to behold, unless you're not prepared to look, unless you avert your eyes. It is stunning to behold. Well, it's been marvelous for us. We'll have a deeper dive with Donald Courter, who was on President Putin's plane as a journalist and has a report, a deep, in-depth report on the importance of the Putin and Xi Jinping summit meeting in Beijing. That's, of course, if there isn't another raging war. And happy birthday to my 91-year-old mother. Happy birthday, Ma.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.